We are in for the first half of the day. Let's keep exploring the seas of stories. And our first speaker for today is a person who comes to this conference not the first time and not the second time. It's probably one of the most experienced and beloved speakers, Anjali Sharma. She's already here on the platform, and Anjali will share how stories is what we need. Not chief storytelling officers, but stories. Anjali is the founder and managing director of Narrative, the Business of Stories, and I welcome you on air. Please join me. Welcome. So lovely to see you.
So lovely to see you. How are you?
Oh, we're all good. Just presented the map, and I hope you caught a bit of it.
Of course I did. I caught all of it, actually, most of it. So thank you. I guess I can take it away. Is that okay?
Yes, of course. Thank you so much for being here and for opening this event. I'm off the air, and let me know if you need me. Let's put some fires for Anjali.
Thank you so much. So thank you, Artem. I want to thank you. I think this is my third or the fourth time speaking at this conference. I'm based in Singapore, everybody, but I am actually from India, originally from India. And there is a reason why I wanted you to know that I'm from India. Because India and Russia share a very, very strong storytelling connection, which goes back to 1951. So after the World War II, during the Cold War tension, an Indian movie in Hindi, which is the India's national language, the name of the movie is Avara. It was dubbed in Russian and released in the Soviet Union. The movie sold 64 million tickets and became the third most foreign language film in the Soviet Union. Now, some of the people who watched this film from the Soviet Union, when asked what about this film connects with you so much, they say that unlike most of the movies that we watch in our language, which are very ideological, this movie is about a simple man, a man who is fighting against poverty, trying to build himself. There is resilience in him, there is optimism in him, and he has become our symbol of hope, just what we need right now. In 1956, when this actor by the name of Raj Kapoor from India visited Moscow, he received so much love from the people there. He was so celebrated, and he felt such a huge connection with the people there. This movie, this story became a phenomenon in Russia, in the Soviet Union. Now, the most interesting part about this story is that people from the Soviet Union thought that the Indians gave them the symbol of optimism, symbol of hope at a difficult time. But when you speak to the Indian movie makers, they had a very different perspective. They thought that the people from the Soviet Union gave them the ability to dream big. After all, Avara, the name of the movie, this movie was the first movie ever to become, Indian movie ever to become so big outside of India. This was indeed a beautiful relationship built on a story where one party thought you brought us hope, and the other party thought you gave me courage and hope and to dream much bigger than I would have otherwise. Well, in some ways, I feel today is a very tiny, tiny, tiny little representation of the same sentiment that was in 1951. Whilst many of you who are listening from Russia today may think that I am sharing my knowledge and insights with all of you based on my 12 years of work in the world of storytelling, what I am thinking truly is that every time I speak in this conference pushes me a little bit more out of my comfort zone. It tells me you can dream bigger, you can do this. Truth be told, I only want to speak at conferences where there are no other storytellers. But when I look at the list and I see people like Mary Ellis Arthur, I see Cynthia Crutz, I see David Hutchins, I see Mark, I think, oh my God, my entire career has built on learning from these people. What am I going to speak? But thank you so much for having me. And thank you for giving me the courage to dream bigger and to think bigger and to push myself a little bit out of the comfort zone. So I want to move to the topic of today's conference, which is Chief Story Officer in an organization. Good thing, bad thing? Let's discover that together. So what I've done, I've been given 30 minutes to talk to you today, out of which I've got 25 left now. So I've got 3 chapters in which I will unfold and answer a point of view on what is the role of a chief storytelling officer. Each one of this chapter is built on my lived experience in the last 12 years that I've been doing the storytelling work. So let's start with chapter 1. I call this chapter one of my biggest failures in the last decade. And it is absolutely true. It is one of my biggest failures in the last decade. So in 2016, almost a decade ago now, one day I found myself sitting amongst 6,000 plus people in a really large auditorium. It was a town hall, and the CEO of the company was announcing the CRM system change. So I'm not going to take anything for granted here and tell you that CRM system is a client relationship management system, a very important system for large enterprises, because their entire billing and the customer's details, everything sits in this large system. And this company, the consumer team alone, has 10,500 people. When you join the enterprise team, there's another 20,000. So it's a very, very large company. So I had been appointed on this project just a day before this town hall and was asked by my client to sit in the town hall, see, listen, observe how the CEO delivers the message and how could I potentially help him deliver it even better. I remember sitting there with many pens in case one stopped working, and papers, and furiously taking note of every word that the CEO was saying. When I quickly scanned what he had said, primarily the CEO's speech in the town hall had 3 things that he had said. The first thing he said was that we need to change our CRM system because we are losing market share. The second thing he said was that we are working in isolation. The third thing he said was that we have way too many systems, which makes our life really complex. So I kind of highlighted those 3 things and I got the gist of what he was trying to say. A few hours later, the town hall finished, and I asked a telephone operator who was sitting right next to me, do you understand? Do you understand what did your CEO say? What your CEO said? And what this telephone operator said fundamentally changed the way I approach my storytelling profession, completely changed the way I approach it. Please listen to what she said very, very carefully. She said to me, the CEO talked about losing market share. I want you to know I don't get paid enough to worry about market share. He can worry about that. And I was like, oh my God. In some ways, I thought she's absolutely true. This is absolutely correct. But what am I going to do about this? This particular conversation was my baptism into that project. For the next 1 year, I worked with the CEO and close to 70 leaders to build the narrative for why the CRM system needs to change, then work with the leadership team, close to 200 of them, to teach them how to deliver this narrative, which was very, very specific to their particular teams. So each team had a slightly different version, messaging same, slightly different version for the narrative. We delivered this narrative, and all the data that we collected on our delivery reflected that we had done really, really well. But what was really exciting for me was that we had changed the pantry, elevator, smoking area, cafeteria, and water cooler conversation. People were no more relating the CRM system change to the company make maximizing profit share. People were saying, this new CRM system is going to give me all the information in a dashboard. And when the customer calls the next time, I have all the information there. I don't have to tell the customer, hold on, let me find out, and get shouted at by the customer for not being able to find the information quickly. The other person said, this CRM system gives me everything I need to know so quickly that I can respond to the call effectively really quickly. My call rating doesn't drop. I get my next promotion, right? So people had moved away from making CRM system about an organizational success and attached it to their own success. The project was super successful, data reflected, conversations reflected, leadership team's interaction with people on the ground also reflected that. Yet, despite all of this project became one of my biggest failures in the last 1 decade. Because here's what happened after. After what happened was 2 months after the project was over, I caught up for lunch with my key stakeholder. And I asked her, how's it all going? Like we always do, right? Like we have a casual meeting and say, how is it all going? I mean, most of the CRM work had already been done. But what I was interested in knowing was whether the storytelling culture lived after the project was over or it had died a natural death. Well, my fear became true. And the client said to me, for as long as you were in the picture, all was well. But after you left, everyone defaulted to old ways. I mean, the CRM stuff is all done, but we now talk like we had never learned storytelling ever before. What I picked in that conversation was, as long as I was in the picture. So I said to my client, why don't you get a chief storytelling officer? Maybe just call it a chief storytelling manager if it's not a higher role you want. Just get someone who takes the responsibility like I took. Just get someone. I promise I'll even help you train this person as long as you can get budget for this resource. 2 months later, my client called and said, I got the budget. Let's do it. So we set the little office up. I taught her how I had taught this new lady how I had managed everything, how everything was done. And I thought this is now going to be a really great thing for the client and for this newly appointed storytelling manager, but only to learn that just in 1.5 months after that role was set up, it was made redundant. It was made redundant. Why was it made redundant? Here are the things that this person experienced. Now, this I'm going to read out to you from actually the WhatsApp that I had received from the client. So the client said, when we started working with the storytelling manager, the corporate affairs team said, isn't this my job? Then the CEO's office, which had 4 people, said, isn't this our job? Because CEO should be telling the story. The entire senior leadership team said, shouldn't we all be storytellers? Why do we have a story manager here? And HR said, how do I grade that job? What are the KPIs? Tangible contributions and outcomes. What is it? How do I measure success in this role? Which then led to a debate in the meeting room, which was, do all critical capabilities need a chief role? Then we should have not just a chief storytelling officer, we should have a chief navigator, chief change master, and chief this and chief that and chief everything. In the end, corporate communications and public affairs claimed that role, and the chief story manager or officer, what was she, whatever her title was, I can't remember now, she was made redundant. What I learned from that project, not only it hit me so hard that my idea and my setup failed, but what I learned from that was the key lesson from that experience was there are way too many overlaps with existing roles within the organization, which do not allow for a clear job specification to be created for a chief storytelling officer. A chief storytelling officer does not, in this scenario, did not have a very clear definition of what exactly was this person required to do. Please remember, when I was doing that role, I was working on a very specific project. But this person was required to work on an everyday basis as this person was appointed in that chief storytelling role. There are way too many overlaps. Let's move to chapter 2. Chapter 2 that I have for you is of another experience. And the title, the name that I have given for this one is The Retrenchment Project That Retrenched the Chief Storytelling Officer. And let me tell you what happened in this case. So a couple of years ago, I started to work with the CHRO of a really large company. Now, this company has like many, many decades of history. It's been going around for many, many, many years. And in their entire history, they have never, ever, ever had retrenchment. Last year was the first year they had to retrench people because they were going through a transformation. Now, if any one of you has ever worked on a pure transformation project, and I say pure because transformation is not just simple change, it's not evolution, it's not adaptability. Transformation truly means where you are actually breaking things before you are building things. You break systems, you break structures, you break dreams, you break processes before you start building. It's a very painful process because before you start showing people the future, you make them see how their current reality is breaking down. And retrenchment, many a times, is a part of a transformation. So when they announced this transformation, retrenchment was the first phase. And I was working with the CHRO directly to do all the announcements that were attached with this retrenchment involved in the transformation. When I was appointed on the project, I was requested by the client that a representative from marketing and communication would sit right next to me throughout the time that I would be in this project. I very willingly said, great, please, I'm very happy to have someone sit right next to me. And then I also asked, what is the purpose? They said, we want this person to learn how you're doing what you're doing so that when your scope is over, this person can take over. So in a way, this person was a storytelling officer in making. So we started working. To me, it was a delight because if I ever had any questions about the company, like when was this established, that established, this person could find out for me. So we worked really well together. I started delivering the project. I actually sat inside the CHRO's office. I had direct access to him. His whole team was supporting me throughout the project. Anytime I needed a clarification on something, I had a question on something, I wanted to speak to more people or other leaders, this team would make it happen. So this team was a wonderful team. This project was an important project. The CHRO was fully involved in it. And truth be told, I was a consultant that they were paying, so they wanted the best quality. They were all committed to this project. This was a specific project again. Now, I finished all the CHRO deliverables till the last phase of the project, handed it all back to the team, got out of it. 6 months later, I get a call. Now another leader from the same team needs your help for something. My first question is, what happened to the person who sat next to me for close to 8 months? You can ask her. You can ask her to help. They said, no, she's doing storytelling, but now she's doing storytelling in the marketing team. So I said, what exactly does that mean? They said that she's doing content. I said, okay, no point asking too many questions here. When I went back to help the second leader, I caught up for a coffee with that girl who had sat right next to me for 8 months. And please listen carefully what she said. It is, truly the ground reality of how organizations function. She said to me, when you come in, we're working on a specific project. When I'm asked to work, I am a storytelling officer every day. There is no specific project. Many a days, I have to figure out what stories do I need to tell. You don't have to figure that out. As a person who has worked in the field for 12 years, you are naturally respected. You're a consultant who's being paid. You have access to the CHRO anytime you want, and you have access to people on the ground anytime you want. And the third thing that she said was super, super insightful. She said to me, it is very important you know that the foundation of your work is the stories you collect from the ground in our team. I don't have access to that. I said, what do you mean you don't have access to that? You are sitting in the office, you're a part of the team. I have to work doubly hard to find those stories. She says, no, because what you're doing has the senior leadership team's blessing. They're involved in it. But what I'm doing, people find more work. I say, I'm writing a story on this thing. I'm trying to get a thing done on this thing. They go, I don't have time to collaborate on all of this. I really need to get my own work done. What you're trying to do doesn't seem urgent at all. She says, I have no foundation for insights. Just like when marketing team tells stories, they have insights from consumer and customers. When HR tells stories, they have insights from employees. She says, as a storytelling person, I need to collaborate with everyone. In though that little time that I did that role, I felt like they should call me trying to be chief collaborating officer, not chief storytelling officer, because I was always trying to collaborate. And in the time poor environment that we experience in the workplace, nobody has time to collaborate for things that they don't think is important. My biggest insight from this project was that if you put a storytelling officer into an organization, where are they going to get the insights from on the ground realities from? They are not in those functions. They have to go and find those. For them to find those, they have to be allowed entry into those functions. And if there is no welcoming of them into those functions, they sit down and build stories based on desktop research, which does not really leave the same impact that a story that you get from the ground would. So this project failed, this initiative failed as well. Now we have, you appoint a storytelling officer, it fails. You train a storytelling officer, it fails. At this point, I'm also starting to get a little bit frustrated, thinking, how is it that in the last 8 to 10 years, we have seen roles like Chief Innovation Officer come up, Chief Digital Officer come up, Chief Sustainability Officer come up. Why do we struggle with Chief Storytelling Officer? This takes me to my chapter 3 for you. And the title of this chapter is The Chat That Changed Everything for Me. The chat that revealed to me what exactly is required in an organization. So December 2024, I worked with a large team, one of the companies in the world that is known to be the best storytelling company. They make a dark brown fizzy drink. I'm sure you can guess who they are. I worked with them and I asked one of their very senior leaders that would having a chief storytelling officer in a company that is considered one of the world's best storytelling company be a good thing? And the answer that this leader gave me was super insightful. She said, you don't really understand our business model, I think. All we do as a business is that we have the proprietary base concentrate or the syrup that we give to the bottlers who then make the product and sell it. We are not responsible for profit and loss. We are not responsible for day-to-day business. We are just selling this concentrate, right? The bottlers, the people who sell our product, they are responsible for all of this. So if we don't have day-to-day business headache, what are we actually doing? We're actually only telling stories. We're telling stories of the innovation we're doing. We're telling stories about how we are helping bottlers. We're telling stories of how we are actually, telling stories to investors about our profitability. We are telling stories every day. If you're going to get a chief storytelling officer, what are we going to do? What is going to be our role? Our company is called World's Best Storytelling Company because that's all we do. Then I said, maybe wrong company for the conversation, because majority of the companies don't have that. Majority of the companies have a business model where they're responsible for profit and loss. So I said, I'll turn to someone else. So I asked another client who I had worked with a couple of years ago, and I said, a couple of years ago, we worked together. Tell me how many people are actually using stories after the work we had done. She says, look, sales and marketing, some people use it, but our finance and legal people, they don't use it. So I said, why don't they use it? She's like, I don't know. Why don't you talk to them? I know enough people in that company. So we went and we spoke to one of the finance person who we know really, really well. He started laughing and he says, Anjali, I'm okay with being mediocre. I said, are you okay with being mediocre? Is the entire finance team okay with being mediocre? He says, we are all okay with being mediocre. Storytelling makes us exceptional, we agree, but storytelling also consumes a lot of our time. It takes a lot of our mental space. We don't have time to be doing all of that. Therefore, we are happy to be mediocre. We don't need to be shiny with our stories at all. So then I asked both those clients, if we gave you a chief storytelling officer, would that be a good thing? Both of them said no. I said, why? He said, we'll never use the person because by providing us a chief storytelling officer, you're not taking the work away. We still need to collaborate with that person and give that person the insight. And then that person will maybe give us some guidance and advice on how to do this. We don't want that chief storytelling officer. That again revealed to me that people don't want chief storytelling officer because they think by having that one person, it creates more work for them. Now, what do these stories actually mean? And what can we do? What can we do becomes the question. So the first time I ever heard of a chief storytelling officer or chief storytelling position was actually for a role in Microsoft. I had the privilege of actually meeting Steve Clayton, who was the chief storytelling officer of Microsoft. This was back in 2010, almost 16 years ago. When you look at what Steve Clayton actually writes down, he's not with Microsoft anymore. When he writes down under what he did as a chief storytelling officer, some of the things that come up are this: running product demos, speaker series, book publishing, events. If I showed these 4 things to marketing or corporate communications or any other team, they can all claim this. They can say, we do this, right? So then the question is, what was the value that he was adding, that he was called the chief storytelling officer, or he led a team of 40 people? I think here's where the insight is. Let's take one example. On the 4th of Feb, 2014, when Satya Nadella became the first CEO of Indian origin to become the CEO of Microsoft, the way he introduced himself reflects what magic Steve and his team brought. So Satya Nadella wrote 1,000+ word letter to his employees. The first few hundred words are magnificent words, and the team had worked on those. I'll read those words out to you. The letter starts like this. This is Satya Nadella, the CEO of Microsoft, his letter to his employees as their new CEO. I'm 46. I've been married for 22 years. We have 3 kids. And like anyone else, a lot of what I do and how I think has been shaped by my family and my overall life experiences. Many who know me say I'm defined by my curiosity and thirst for learning. I buy more books than I can finish. I sign up for more online courses than I can complete. I fundamentally believe that if we're not learning new things, we stop doing great and useful things. So family, curiosity, and hunger for knowledge all define me. Now, in the absence of someone who doesn't understand storytelling, this kind of first few hundred words in that letter would not have been possible. Steve Clayton's role today, after being the storytelling officer, moved into strategy and comms. I have seen a similar pattern in other companies like NASA JPL. There is a chief story architect, Paul Probster, really wonderful gentleman who's also played an incredible role in shaping my career, also blurbed my book. He also, from being a chief story architect, then moved into the strategy and comms role. The point of this experience is that storytelling is a fundamental skill. It's a line across every domain. It's not a pointy skill like digital. It's not a pointy skill like sustainability. It needs to be threaded through everything. And the best person to tell that story is the person who's in that domain, because they have the best knowledge of that domain. No chief storytelling officer sitting on the 95th floor of an organization can do as amazing a job as that person who sits within the business can. Which leads me to that, just like we talk, just like we email, just like we message, we need to tell stories. It's a fundamental skill. Henry Mintzberg, in his book, Nature of Managerial Work, says talk is work. 70%, 78% of the time, what we do is we talk. Imagine doing that ineffectively. We don't have chief talking officers in the company. So, in summary, what I'm saying is that if we could do one thing, to have more stories in an organization, is to recognize that storytelling is not our work, but through storytelling, we do our work well. And if we took the initiative to upskill every single person to the best of our ability to storytell well, we will create a culture that will lead to the success of the organization. You know, when I first started storytelling, I read this wonderful book by Steve Denning, in which there was a line: birds fly, fish swim, and humans tell stories. That's what we do. So in essence, what I would say is that, you know, in spirituality, Hindu spirituality, there is a lesson. If you want someone to succeed, you can't do the thing for them. One, you have to demonstrate yourself that you do that thing. Second, you have to give them exposure to learn how to do that thing. I think the same applies to storytelling. One, you do storytelling a lot to build the culture as much as you can. Secondly, give opportunities for everybody to learn how to storytell. And that's how you will make everybody a storyteller. That's all I have for you, everybody. I want to go back to where I started today. A single story by the name of Avara, the movie, brought Soviet Union and India closer. I hope my day-to-day work stories brought you closer to the question, what is the role of Chief Story Officer? Many thanks for your time.
Anjali, thank you so much. It was lovely. We've been discussing with Yevgeny in the background how you are sharing very simple and yet very influential insights on what breaks the role and stops the CSO from being effective. That was lovely. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Dear friends, we welcome your question in the comments. We have 7 minutes for the Q&A, and we already have a question from Alexis. Is there a role for story weavers who move through organization listening to stories and the patterns they reveal?
Absolutely. In an ideal world, that would be an amazing thing. It's a little bit like learning. It's a little bit like, I don't learn something when I need it. I learn all the time. And when the need arises, I use the learning. So if you have story weavers who are going around and collecting stories and sharing, and if patterns reveal, the challenge of an organization remains, is that a priority for people? Making that a priority for someone to spend time to listen to you on that is going to be a big challenge. That's where the leadership culture plays a huge, very, very, very big role. What do the leaders do? Do they make this important? In my 12 years of doing this work, I have had many successful projects. I've also failed in certain projects. And if I look at the ones where I failed, I did not have the leadership team right next to me. Whenever I have the leadership team, it just works well because everybody sees the leader and starts doing what's needed to be done, even if they right at the beginning don't believe in it. But if I don't have the leader standing next to me, they're like, why should we listen to this woman who's just walked in and thinks that she can change the culture of our company? So I think Story Weavers is a great idea. The success is really dependent on whether you have the leadership's blessing or not.
And it ties back to the blessing from above. I love this connection that you've made. We have a different question coming from Michelle. I found fascinating the first chapter of your presentation, and I joined that wholeheartedly. I was curious about one detail. Do you think the process that you have started with developing this new role was only possible in Singapore, that is so famous for being a nation of innovation?
Okay, all right. So I love that question. Is it only possible in Singapore? I would think oral cultures, Singapore is not necessarily an oral culture. It's a very, very advanced, willing to invest kind of a culture and extremely efficient with project management culture. I don't think it's an oral culture. So there is naturally a place for someone who fills that gap. That there's this gap of somebody who can orally do this part. Most people rather not, right? Which then also leads to a problem. The problem here is that because the culture is so designed for efficiency, a lot of the people will ask, what is the ROI of this? What is the roadmap to this? The questions which are very project-based questions, because they're in their subconscious, they are excellent project managers, right? Project managers I've never seen anywhere else, like that good. They are planning for scenarios 50 years from now. I'm not kidding you. They're so good. They're planning for scenarios which will happen 50 years from now, okay? They have that level of insight. So Singapore, the challenge of Singapore is getting someone to that place. Once that person is put in that place, there is a lot of success because then they're filling that gap. But getting the person in that role, no. Where in oral cultures like in the United States and all, I find, or even in Australia, I find it, okay, there's no data I have, there's no research I have, personal experience. I find it a lot more easier because those are a lot more oral. The cultures are a lot more oral.
It's great insight. And I believe this tendency towards this ROI and operation results may be a benefit and a difficulty at the same time. Because if you can prove that storytelling links to the ROI, it's easier to implement the role. But then again, it's hard to break this barrier and prove it in the first place.
Precisely. Once you're in it, it's excellent because you would have worked out the matrix and you know what they want, right? But getting into it becomes a trouble, becomes a real hard thing. So in Singapore, once you're in, but getting in is a huge problem.
Love it. We have time for one more question, and a traditional question as usual. Anya is asking, does every business need a chief story officer, or there are businesses that don't?
I personally don't think any business needs a chief story director. Every business needs everybody to be skilled with storytelling, to be very honest with you. You cannot tell a better story than the person themselves in that particular domain. They will always have you may teach them styles and deliveries and methods. That's teaching, that's coaching, but they will have access to the best story. You won't have that. So I feel you don't need to appoint such roles. Go back to the lesson of spirituality that I said. If you want someone to be better, if you want the people in the organization to be better, you want the company to be better, two things you can do. You do yourself, show how to do it. And the second thing is give them as many opportunities as possible to learn and platforms to learn. You can't do it for them. You cannot do storytelling for someone else.
Exactly. Thank you so much. Anjali, you've been a gift, as usual. There are a couple more questions in the chat, and if you are able to, please stay and reflect with us in text. But as a tradition, here's my traditional question. So story can obviously be applied to lots of tasks in organizations, like clarifying change, driving sales, boosting culture. But let's imagine there was one task that you could apply stories towards, only one. Which task or area would you choose and why?
I will start with the culture. I will start with the culture, and I'll start with the CEO in the culture. Because there's just a naturally, you got to leverage the influence of a CEO. He or she has a lot more radiation than anybody else does. So if you focus on culture changes, sales changes, culture changes, marketing changes, culture changes, operations changes, culture has to change.
Much. Anjali, you are such a gift. Thank you so much for joining us and opening this event. Please stay with us, and we'll be moving forward with the energy you gave us. Let's give some fires as gratitude to
Awesome.
Anjali.
Thank you so much for being the gift and bringing us all together. What you do is just, I feel the word incredible is also less. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you,
So much.
everybody.
Appreciate you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.